Allegedly discovered in 2007, this supposed final episode of the series was never aired due to its disturbing content. The episode opens with an unusual silence. No theme song, just a foggy morning in the cul-de-sac. The entire Peach Creek neighborhood appears empty and lifeless. Colors look washed out, almost drained from the world. Eddy emerges from his house with a vacant expression, wandering through the empty streets calling for his friends. As the episode progresses, Eddy discovers the other children standing completely motionless like wax figures. Their eyes are open but empty. No matter how he tries to interact with them, they remain frozen in place. The cul-de-sac gradually transforms into a more distorted version of itself. Houses appear abandoned and decayed, trees lose their leaves. The sky darkens to an unnatural gray. The familiar neighborhood becomes increasingly nightmarish with each passing minute. At one point, Eddy finds a photograph of himself with his friends, but Ed and Double D's faces are blurred beyond recognition. The disturbing image causes him to back away in horror. In the final sequence, Eddy returns to his house and slowly climbs the stairs. When he opens his bedroom door, the camera shows his perspective, revealing Eddy's own body hanging from a rope in the center of the room. The screen flickers and text appears. "You've seen this before," and then another line, and they've all seen it. The final frames show the cul-de-sac return to normal. The children play and argue as usual, but Eddy is nowhere to be seen. No one mentions him as if he never existed. According to the legend, this was intended to be the dark revelation that Eddy had committed suicide, and all the adventures were merely his dying fantasies or some form of purgatory. In late 2016, a strange VHS tape allegedly surfaced, supposedly containing behind-the-scenes footage from Cartoon Network studios. The faded label read "Gumball, behind the scenes, not for distribution." The recording begins innocently enough, appearing to be a studio tour. An off-camera voice resembling Gumball's welcomes viewers to a tour of the animation studio where the show is supposedly created. The first few minutes seem like standard promotional material. Gumball, drawn in his usual style, guides viewers through an animated studio, empty rooms, animation desks, and character sketches. As the video progresses, the recording quality deteriorates. Static and distortion appear with increasing frequency. Gumball's voice changes, becoming deeper and slower. His animation begins to glitch. Movements become jerky and unnatural. Gumball opens a door marked "Do Not Enter" to reveal a dark room with a solitary easel. On the canvas is an unfinished character resembling a distorted version of Darwin. The next several minutes show Gumball wandering through increasingly surrealistic studio areas. Colors become toxic and unnaturally bright. The soundtrack loops. The phrase "I drew you" repeats over and over, gradually distorting. Characters from the show appear in frame, but they look wrong. Anais has no mouth, Nicole has too many teeth, and Richard is just an outline with eyes. The final scene shows Gumball sitting in front of the camera. His eyes are empty, black holes. He slowly smiles, revealing too many teeth, and whispers, "I drew you, and now you can never erase me." The screen goes black with the message "transmission interrupted," followed by several seconds of static. Supposedly, the few Cartoon Network employees who viewed this tape promptly quit their jobs. One animator allegedly claimed they never worked on such material and that the Gumball in the tape moved on his own. In 2014, a strange incident allegedly occurred. During a late-night Cartoon Network broadcast, an episode of regular show number 13B aired, an episode that was never meant for release. According to the few reported witnesses, the episode began without the usual intro. Instead, static noise gradually gave way to an image of the park. The colors were dull, almost monochromatic. The episode shows Mordecai and Rigby playing video games in the house. Their dialogue sounds strange, as if the voice actors are reading lines for the first time without emotion. The camera slowly pulls back to reveal the house is empty except for them. On the table lies a calendar with all days crossed out except one, marked "The End." Mordecai and Rigby venture outside to find the park completely abandoned. All rides are stopped, personal belongings scattered everywhere as if people vanish suddenly. They explore the park, which becomes increasingly dilapidated and eerie with each scene. Trees appear dead and the sky takes on a reddish tint. At one point they discover Benson's office. Inside, the Gumball machine is shattered, with gumballs scattered across the floor, some crushed. A montage follows. Mordecai and Rigby spend days in the empty park. They try calling phones, no one answers. They attempt to leave the park boundaries, but somehow always end up back at the house. Their relationship gradually deteriorates. They become suspicious of each other, accusations fly, and paranoia grows. In the next scene, Mordecai wakes up alone. Calling for Rigby yields no response. Eventually he finds a note. "I found the truth. Follow me if you dare." The final part shows Mordecai following strange symbols drawn on trees. They lead him to an old well in a remote part of the park. When he peers inside, Rigby's voice echoes from the darkness, "You're stuck with me. Forever." The screen goes black. A date appears at 2051 Tigunican, followed by an alarm sound. The final shots show the empty park from a bird's eye view. The camera pulls back farther and farther until the park becomes a tiny dot and then disappears entirely. Allegedly, several Cartoon Network technical staff were fired after this unauthorized broadcast, and all copies of episode 13B were destroyed. Officially, the channel denies the existence of this episode. Between the end of Samurai Jack's 4th season in 2004 and the release of the 5th in 2017, 13 years passed. According to urban legend, an intermediate episode was created in 2006 but never aired. This episode, supposedly titled Lost Time as Ikenbarha, was allegedly discovered by a former show animator who shared information on an anonymous forum. The episode begins without an opening sequence. We see Samurai Jack walking through a lifeless desert. He appears exhausted, his clothes torn, eyes sunken, beard longer than we saw in the canonical 5th season. The landscape around him is surrealistic, rocks form impossible structures. The sky has an unnatural purple hue. In the distance, the ruins of a futuristic city are visible. As Jack travels, he begins to encounter strange versions of himself. The first is young Jack as he was at the beginning of his journey. This younger version looks at his older self with horror. Jack continues to meet other versions of himself. Jack killed by Aku, Jack betrayed by his allies, Jack driven mad and talking to non-existent people. With each encounter, the atmosphere becomes increasingly disturbing. In one particularly eerie scene, Jack discovers a version of himself who has completely surrendered to Aku, with black skin and flaming eyes. The real Jack fights this dark version, but the battle ends in stalemate. Neither can defeat the other. In the episode's climax, Jack reaches a strange monolith in the middle of the desert. Symbols in an unrecognizable language are engraved on it. When he touches the monolith, a time portal appears before him similar to the one that sent him to the future. But when he approaches the portal, Aku emerges from it. Speaking with Jack's voice, he yells, 50 years have passed, but I do not age. Time has lost its effect on me. Aku transforms into a new form, a hybrid of himself and Jack. In the final scene, Jack stands alone in the desert. He slowly turns and looks directly at the camera, as if aware of the viewer's presence, and says, "The one who watches is next." The last frame shocks with its realism, not animation, but actual footage of a human eye widened with fear. The pupil contracts to a point and the screen goes black. According to legend, this episode was created by a small group of animators during a period of uncertainty about the show's future. It was supposed to hint that the time Jack spent in the future was gradually destroying his sanity. However, Cartoon Network management allegedly found the material too dark and philosophical for the target audience. In the late 1990s, when Courage the Cowardly Dog was in production, according to rumors, an episode was created that never aired. The film reel containing this episode was allegedly discovered in Cartoon Network archives with the marking "Do Not Air" too real. The episode begins uncharacteristically quietly. No energetic music, no comic introduction of characters. Instead, we see the Baga house at night, surrounded by unusually thick fog. The soundtrack contains only the howling wind and distant, barely distinguishable whispers. Courage wakes up in his bed. The house is empty and silent. He goes downstairs and discovers the television is on, though no one is watching it. The screen shows only static noise. Suddenly, a voice comes from the television. "Courage. They're gone, Courage." The frightened dog turns around and sees Eustace in his chair and Muriel in her rocking chair, but they don't move. Their eyes are open, but their gaze is empty. The voice from the television continues. "They're no longer here, Courage. Tanoli come. Only voices remain. As the episode develops, Courage explores the house, which becomes increasingly strange and distorted. Rooms that shouldn't exist. Doors leading nowhere. In each room, he hears voices. Sometimes Eustace's, sometimes Muriel's, sometimes unknown people. The voices become louder, merging into a cacophony. As Courage panics and runs through the house, the walls begin to crack, the wallpaper peels off like skin. Underneath is not plaster but something resembling living flesh.